I think somehow along the way, this whole industry got on the wrong track. And so consequently, it's to our detriment that we are not scaling faster.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Have been looking forward to today's discussion as we're sitting here with Ruth Hedges, CEO of Rise Up Crowdfunding, referred to as the Queen of Crowdfunding by Forbes, was part of the original implementation of the Jobs Act in 2012. Going to get all into that today. Ruth, thanks for taking the time to join the pod.
Thank you so much for inviting me. My pleasure.
And Ruth, we met years back. I was a part of your conference in Las Vegas. I've always referred to you as a thought leader in the space and early pioneer at that. Want to be able to go back, go into the history today, and thought we could, kick things off by telling your story.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So during the last recession in 2008, 2009, the banks were not lending any money. The banks, the VCs and angels had all their capital had dried up, and we were all sitting. A group of us were sitting on a phone call, talking about the fact that there was so much money in the hands of the rest of us that were not considered accredited investors, and that if we could convince Congress to change the laws, that we could open up this floodgate of money when we desperately needed it, because there were no PPP loans, there was nothing. And so somebody on the call said, well, it's going to take an act of Congress, which people joke about that statement all the time. And we said, well, then let's go. And we literally started down that road. We went to DC. We spoke to congressmen and senators. We actually got Whoopi Goldberg, who was one of our first sponsors. She helped buy plane tickets and paid for some different things so we could go there. Took several years. We drafted the first, with Sherwood Neese and Jason Best, the first draft of what became Title III 4A6, or what's referred to as Reg CF. It was called the Startup Exemption, and it was like 22 pages. And that's what we shopped around. And, I live in Nevada, so I worked with Senator Reid, who was the head of the Senate at the time. And so, which was very helpful to get the senators on board and eventually get this, through the finish line. So that's where it all started. That's why Forbes referred to me as a queen of crowdfunding, and I'm sort of an OG in this whole thing, because I've been doing this now for almost 14 years, trying to build an industry around an idea that a bunch of us had in a phone call, and a bunch of phone calls, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, it just started
Absolutely.
to evolve. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we hear so many different perspectives on what Reg CF is today, why it was created. So to hear how it was born, from its infancy, the calls that took place. And there's such a mystery to me around lobbying and getting things passed. I hear about all the difficulties. You told me you started in 2009 before getting it passed in 2012. So can imagine it was a lot of hard work to get it to that point. Today, there's been over 6,400 issuers who have used Reg CF, and all thanks to this vehicle that was put into place.
Yeah. And, the problem, though, with that, having said all that, is I wake up 14 years later and realize this should be like crypto. It should be that well known. It should be that well accepted. It should be everybody throw a few $100 into it and you roll the dice on it like they did crypto when crypto exploded onto the scene 5 or 6 years ago, or whatever it was. And unfortunately, it hasn't. And it is incredibly frustrating to me, because I live and breathe this for every day of my life, and have for 14 years now. And we still cannot get this industry off the ground the way I believe it should be taking off.
Absolutely. I actually use that analogy all the time. I remember a point in 2017 where I was explaining to people what equity crowdfunding, Reg CF, regulation crowdfunding is every day. I right. More or less still do today here in right. 2023. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, in let's say Q4 17, people were telling me what Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was every day. And we were, of course, already well versed in the space. But I think it was because of those investor success stories. We were able to see, unfortunately, in excess, the Lamborghinis and, different stories of people who had liquidity events. And I believe when that occurs to a greater extent, and I track the IPOs that have occurred from Reg CF, from Reg A campaigns on King's Crowd, they actually have a section on there where you can see who's actually gone public from these. But I think when it's become more commonplace and founders, investors are pointing to Reg CF on how this was all made possible, I think it'll become more mainstream. I think it'll become more utilized. I think in 5 to 10 years, and hopefully that is the timeline. I think I said 5 years back at this point.
I was going to say.
but it'll be a
Jason,
primary.
Let me just throw this into it. Why do we have to look at it as a return on investment for investors? Why can't investors want to, you watch my back and I'll watch yours? Like
Sure.
Today, I'll give you my $200. And next year, when I'm launching my company or I'm expanding my company, I'll come back to you and you'll give me $200. We have billions of people around the world can use this, not just 350 million Americans. I mean, there's an enormous amount of people who could be your investor if you were using this, and you wouldn't have to go and be frustrated by trying to talk to a bunch of elusive VCs and angels that don't even exist in your world, and that you will never have a snow's chance in hell of getting a dime from. I mean, that is the other part of this. We set entrepreneurs up for failure by even implying at all that they'll ever get money from a VC or an angel investor, because most of them don't, and especially women and minority entrepreneurs. So I think we don't have to go down that route. That shouldn't be the motivating factor why you invest in a Reg CF offering, that someday you're going to be rich and drive a Lamborghini. I think it should be that you care about job creation, right?
Yes.
You care about increasing the tax revenue in your city and town or wherever the company is, and other things that again, like I said, if this were to take off and it became as popular as well-known as venture capital, it would be, today I need your help and tomorrow I'm going to be here to help you. And that kind of philosophy, I think, could expand and explode this whole industry.
Sure. And I think it's occurring to an extent today. I'm just looking for more scale. So we've tracked over 1 million different investors on campaigns. WeFunder has a database of over 2 million investors who've participated on their deals. Reg CF is being used. And I think there are plenty of founder success stories. We were on the phone with clients earlier today, both repeat clients and ones that have the most trending campaigns in September and will hit their cap in October based on projections. So I see plenty of brands, of issuers that are seeing the value. I do see investors, and there are databases out there that are accessible where you can track over 50 deals, over 100 deals to individual investors. Even just looking at the investor reviews on platforms like WeFunder and Republic, you could see profiles and portfolios of some of the investors there. So I do think there are serial early stage investors participating. And with that community mindset, I just think it should be on a much bigger stage. And we're seeing VC capital go down a bit and Reg CF pick up. I do think it will be the primary tool in a few years, hopefully within the next 10 max.
Well, I don't want to have to wait that long is what I'm saying.
Of course.
There is a group of people who have vested interest in the success of the industry. Yes. Obviously, owners of funding portals, obviously marketing people like yourself and others who have been at this for a long time, but they don't want to play in the same sandbox together to try and lift up and elevate the industry. So we're kind of all just doing our own little thing here, as opposed to the other industries. I mean, I live in Las Vegas. Every year in January is the Consumer Electronics Show. And guess what? There's Samsung and there's Apple and there's everybody else who are competitors, and they're happy to show up and showcase whatever they happen to have, and they don't feel threatened by whatever the other guys have. And I think somehow along the way, this whole industry got on the wrong track. And so consequently, it's to our detriment that we are not scaling faster. Because nobody wants to play nice together. And it's ridiculous because I'm not impressed with 2 million investors. I'm sorry. And I'm not impressed with some percentage of them being repeat investors. Not when you have 350 million Americans, not when you have people who in an instant flew into crypto. They didn't even know what they were. I mean, at least you can watch a video, right, on a funding portal and buy into something you understand. A movie, a 3D printer, a drone, something. But crypto was like so elusive and people didn't care. And that is what is missing. That kind of speed to market is what is missing in regulation crowdfunding.
Sure. I think we just passed 2 billion raised total across all Reg CF campaigns to date. That, of course, includes all campaigns since March 2021, where the cap went from 1.07 to 5 million. Campaigns could become more impactful, raise more since. But yeah, cryptocurrency, I mean, there was a $2 trillion market cap, at its peak. So completely different leagues, let alone ballparks.
Except that Reg CF is an international form of it's anybody anywhere in the world can invest. So it's not like we should be limited to this small amount of capital or this small amount of investors by now. And part of the problem is, again, because we're not working as an industry, there's no billboards, right? In Times Square, on Las Vegas Boulevard, wherever you happen to live, in Miami, Florida, where all of innovation resides, or in Silicon Valley for that matter. There's no bus benches and there's no buses wrapped with messages, all the things that other industries do. There's no commercials. I would love to see commercials about this. And generic ones that lift up everybody at the same time and help the entire industry. That's what we should be doing. Mm-hmm. And, and we're not. So, here we are.
Sure. And I could tell you from the advertising side, the marketing side, I think the budgets aren't there for most issuers. I think the platforms, some of them run broadcast television advertising, and I hope to see them do more. But I'm on the same page. I want to see it hit more of that mass market, more of the traditional media channels, whether it's paid or organic. I don't want to have to explain what equity crowdfunding is or any name for it.
Over and over and over every single day. I know.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I love about this space is the democratization of capital, access to capital for founders, right, as well as investors and early stage deals. I know you're a big advocate of that. And, inclusion, diversity, groups that may not have been brought to the table years back are at the forefront and have the top campaigns to date with Reg CF. What did that mean for you? Why is that part of your initiative?
So obviously, I'm a woman, for starters.
Sure.
I have spent my most of the last 25 or more years helping companies raise capital. So this is not just about crowdfunding for me. This is about desperately trying to help entrepreneurs for decades. I mean, I was in the .com days. So it has been a problem for a very long time. The inequality of access to capital has been ridiculous. And even last year, I think it was $146 billion of venture capital. Women and minorities got like 2.5% out of all that money. So it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. And no matter how much that the issue is put out in the forefront by every major, publication, prominent publication, articles all over the place, VCs are not embarrassed by it. VCs are not changing how they're behaving in this space. So the rest of us have to step up and do something. And at the end of the day, we control trillions of dollars. They don't. So we have the ability to help fund more women and minorities. And it's just education and obvious exposure to all of this, which is what we're trying to do. And so consequently, 3 years ago, during the beginning of the pandemic, I was contacted by a business associate of mine who worked in supply diversity at Microsoft. he asked me if I would, it was right in the first few months of COVID, everything shut down. And he asked me if I would produce, because I produced the Global Crowdfunding Convention for 6 years in Las Vegas, and Microsoft was one of my sponsors. And so he said, Ruth, I know you're not doing the Vegas event anymore, but would you do a virtual thing? Because we have to, people need access to capital any way they can get it. And there were no, the PPP loan program hadn't launched. This was really in the first couple of months. And I said, absolutely. And so I produced a virtual event. We had over 2,000 people attend. We worked with different organizations like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and veterans organizations and women organizations. We had 9 organizations that brought their members, introduced us to their members. When it was over, my friend at Microsoft said, what else could we do? Like, we should stop here, because we were still in the beginning of the pandemic. And so I came up with this idea to launch. I never really wanted to be in the funding portal business because I had many opportunities to join other funding portals, but I just felt like nobody's focused on this problem. We need a funding portal exclusively focused on women and minority entrepreneurs. And so I came up with the idea for Rise Up Crowdfunding. And we've just spent the last, 3 years basically building this thing and then getting it through the FINRA regulatory process, which is another whole show, frankly.
Sure.
But we did it. And I'm proud to say today we actually launched our first crowdfunding campaign. And it is Palomino the movie. And it's about Carlos Palomino, who won a gold medal during the Olympics the same year, I believe, that Muhammad Ali won his gold medal, and his life story. And it's fascinating, a fascinating story. And there are some producers who are trying to raise money on our funding portal to try and make the film.
Huge. And I was not aware of all these stats. The 146 billion, only 2% going to women and minority founders. Like you said, awareness, getting, the message, the deal flow, the opportunity out there to the right investors, because we've seen female founders, we've seen minority founders, and used messaging in advertisements and content as directed by the brands and issuers that performed to outstanding levels of performance in comparison to industry averages. And I think building these audiences, these communities, these cohorts, almost like you mentioned before, of investors saying, yeah, I'll back this one. I'm actually a founder as well. Maybe we'll back the next. But being able to place a retail investment in many cases. I mean, some of these deals are $100, $500 minimums, but at scale, 1,000, 2,000 investors per million raised in many raises that we see in many rounds. But, Palomino, the movie, being able to see that get funded, the marketing coming along with it, as a marketing enthusiast, it just seems like such a powerful tool, such a powerful vehicle that more people should be involved with. So it's awesome to see what you're doing with Rise Up. Imagine there's a list of other campaigns to follow.
Oh,
and,
we have a
excited about
bunch in
this
the
first
pipeline.
one.
Yeah, they're already going through the due diligence process, and creating their video and creating all their graphic material and their marketing material. As you know, it's a process. It's a big process. But getting back to this inequality of access to capital, it's in all of our best interest. There is so much innovation and cancer research and other medical research and cures for this and cures for that and a million different things that we need in society that have come through the innovation of entrepreneurs. And a lot of them have been women and minorities. And they don't get the credit for it, but they have been at the forefront of a lot of this. And now they're stepping up to create businesses on their own, and they need the capital to launch. Mm-hmm. And it's sitting right there. It's right there, but they don't know that it's right there because they've been wired, they've been conditioned, brainwashed to think you write a business plan and then you go chase a bunch of VCs that you'll never see in your entire life, ever.
Yeah. And then that becomes your full-time job, and there's a success rate that's not great.
And you show up at all these events, you buy these expensive tickets or put up a booth at some big thing, hoping that a VC is going to walk by and stop at your booth, discover you, and write you a multi-million-dollar check.
Sure. And it doesn't work for most founders.
No.
The success rates of startups in their first year, their first 5 years are not great. And a lot of times when there's a debrief, it's under capitalization. They didn't have enough funding. So I early in my career saw amazing products from great brands fail because there were no eyeballs around it. That's why I focus on marketing. That's why once I learned about equity crowdfunding, and I got involved in 2015, Reg D 506C campaigns, and was awaiting the launch of Reg CF and had ads live day one in May 2016. That's why I choose to put my energy here, because of these exact same reasons you're mentioning. And it doesn't have to be one VC or angel. It doesn't have to be a few. You don't have to be selected among all of the deal flow that they get and all of the different emails and phone calls and pitch events and, lunch and learns that they're going to. You can have a large volume of smaller investors that can ultimately become user owners, fund the deal, and partner with you, sharing the upside during the ongoing journey of the brand.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you're getting partnerships put together right and left. I know you talk about Coca-Cola and what they're doing with Rise Up. Can you speak a bit more about that and how you see different corporations playing a role and really fueling the success of these entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So the gentleman who was our sponsor connection at Microsoft moved over to Coca-Cola, and he brought me and my idea with him. And we started collaborating with Coca-Cola, and he became the head of global supply diversity for Coke. And he and I started talking about how some of the challenges that corporations have. Well, one of them is they can't fulfill supply diversity contracts. So if they have to spend $1 billion with women and minorities in 2023, and they look out at the United States landscape, 80% of all the women-owned businesses in the United States do less than $100,000 a year. Well, if they have a $5 million or $10 million contract, there's nobody to give it to, because a woman-owned business, even if she has the skills or the product they're looking for, if she doesn't have the inventory, if she doesn't have the ability to scale to the size of that contract, she's never going to get the contract. Everybody loses. So if we come in and help that woman raise millions of dollars, she can hire more people. If let's say she owns a trucking company and she has 2 trucks, now she can go buy a 3rd truck. She can be a trucker for Coke. Maybe she's she's a bottler, but she can only bottle, so many 1,000 bottles a day, but now she could bottle 5,000 a day. Whatever it is that Coke, whatever these contracts are, many of them could be fulfilled faster if the entrepreneurs that are in that diversity space could get the capital they need. I mean, you see this on Shark Tank all the time. What is the biggest problem? We got a purchase order from Target, but we don't have the money for the inventory. Can you? Yep. And then they always go, if you can prove that you have the purchase order, here, we'll write you a check. Well, what's stopping the general public from doing that? If they knew that that there was a supply diversity contract possibly sitting there. So you have hundreds and hundreds of Fortune 500 companies and other smaller companies in the United States government, and all these people have supply diversity programs. So there's a huge opportunity. So if you go to our website, you'll see supply diversity is in the header, because that is a piece of this that we want to focus on and be unique about what we're doing as it relates to helping women and minority entrepreneurs get access to capital. We also want to help corporations fill their supply diversity responsibilities.
I think it's such a great use of those budgets that these big brands have. And I come from the world of advertising. I'm familiar with the spends and what they're trying to accomplish. And to have that type of impact with a female founder, with the founder of any type of organization, and be able to fuel their success.
A founder, a veteran, LGBTQ
Absolutely.
founder. I mean, any diverse founder there's so many unique ones out there that are not getting their company's ability to scale and also to get these contracts. And I don't know what that is. And and so consequently, we are focused on that objective, those objectives.
It's a great place to be, and glad you're rallying in these companies where, again, I imagine it fits very clearly with their initiatives and does a lot of good for the founders, for the customers and clients that they service, for the communities at whole.
Yes, absolutely.
And where else do you see potential evolutions of the industry? You've been part of it, since 2009, pre-Jobs Act. You've seen it grow. You've seen it slow. You've seen it plateau. You're seeing different brands get involved now. You've launched your platform, building more partnerships. Where do you see it going in the years to come? What is going to make the difference where this hits mass adoption?
I mean, there are government agencies who, if you read the Jobs Act, Title 7, says that the SEC is responsible for educating the country on how this works. They never did that. Had government backed that piece of the Jobs Act with real money and put out information in every one of their government agencies, the SBA, SBDCs, all of the ABC, EFG, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody has an acronym for some age. But there's local ones, there's state ones, there's this one, there's that one. If the government put real money, tens of millions every year behind marketing material that could be disseminated through all of their agencies, that could be massive, massive. And then, of course, if they spent time educating the mentors in these programs, that you walk into a SCORE office, an SBDC office, whatever, and you meet with somebody who call them a mentor.
Sure.
Those people, if they were educated in all of this, it would just be a game changer. And they're required by law in the Jobs Act to do something. It doesn't specify how they have to do it, but it says that they have to do it. I mean, besides what they put up on their website, that's it. I haven't seen any effort in all these years.
I'm so glad I asked that. I've never heard that before. And I asked this question to other equity crowdfunding experts on the show, and I've never heard that. It makes perfect sense. That it sounds like, and I haven't looked at all the details, but it sounds like the proper rollout was never put in place. It's actually required by the law. And yeah, I know the power of media and traffic. If it was rolled out in a marketing fashion that's similar to these issuers and portals that are day in, day out trying to promote, it could be very powerful, as well as, like you said, the plethora of different acronym agencies and training their advisors, their coaches on it. And I'm familiar with those organizations. We've tried to, speak with them a bit and have held workshops, but it's always a small part of their program, where if it was integrated in a larger fashion, it could be far more.
Every one of those offices money common. And said, listen, here's what you have to do with this money this year.
Yeah.
These webinars and these, in office classes or whatever they told them to do with the money, they would have to do that, and it would be a game changer. The other thing that is missing in this whole story, the banking industry. Let's talk about the banking industry. What kind of role do they have to play? So for some reason, banks are threatened by other sources of capital, and they're looking at this all wrong, Jason. They should look at this like, what are you looking for from an entrepreneur? Credit and collateral. Okay. Well, guess what? If I help you raise $5 million that you didn't have yesterday, you're going to be they'll roll out the red carpet at your local bank, right?
Yeah.
You're going to need insurance, which banks sell. You're going to need help with payroll, which banks sell, and all these other things that banks sell. So the idea that they don't want to partner with funding portals or with the industry in this has been ridiculous to me from the beginning. And I've desperately tried to get banks involved. They're threatened by us because they think, if they come to a funding portal to raise money, then they don't need a bank loan. And that is the furthest from the truth, because you and I both know that most people raise less than $500,000 doing this, and they still need other money because, like you said early on, they're always undercapitalized. That's why they fail. So if they could walk into a bank and say, we just raised $500,000, we're going to put it in your bank, and use it as collateral against a bigger loan so we can cover our payroll, whatever. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody.
I agree. And yeah, I mentioned repeat clients. We're on our 6th round with one client, many on their 2nd, 3rd round. The needs don't go away. In fact, they become more validated. The valuation goes up. They're doing more business. They're being featured. They have more partners in place. So what we find, once issuers see success, their businesses grow. And beyond just the insurance and payroll, which is a great point, they become far more needed at the bank, and the relationship grows from there. But additional loans, I hear founders talk about this, and unfortunately on the marketing side, sometimes the marketing pauses and everything goes into R&D. It goes into other areas of the business. They have to kind of put a hold on things. So it's not that they get the capital and they're done. It's a success story as much as, hey, now they're actually a larger tier client at the bank. I do picture those institutions getting more involved down the line. I hadn't thought in this light, and definitely see opportunities for them to get involved now. I mean, they sponsor entrepreneurship programs. It does seem like a missing that they haven't played a bigger part since 2016.
Yes, I agree. And I've tried, trust me.
Yeah, I was going to ask for the banks, and also just for government promotions. Are there individuals, groups speaking to the government and to the banks about this? Do you think it's something that's going to be more present in years to come?
I hope so. I mean, I have tried over the years. I gave everybody in Las Vegas, all of SBC and SCORE, they all had booths at my, I gave them booths, free booths, so they could show off and talk and send their employees to come to listen to the 3 days of convention speakers and learn about this from the beginning. And I started in 2012 after the Jobs Act was signed on April 5th, 2012 by President Obama. We had 2/3 of the House, of the Senate, and almost 400 congressmen signed this into law. Just to put in perspective, when you consider what's going on in the Congress today, literally today, they're going to shut the government down. This was an amazing feat that we pulled off. It really was, Yeah. Everybody understood it and said, okay, let's play nice together. And they signed it into law. And then in October of that year, I was actually approached by a lawyer at a law firm. And he asked me, what's your next step in all of this? And I said, well, I think we need like a boot camp. And so I came up with this idea to put on this small little boot camp in Las Vegas. And it turned out to be a 6-year journey of the global crowdfunding convention. And then, and then I became a consultant, and I've worked with many clients on how, doing this. And then the opportunity to launch Rise Up, after I came up with the idea, happened. And now we're looking to bring on more women and minority entrepreneurs onto the funding portal, and also, encourage people to be investors. I mean, it's not that complicated, people. It really isn't. You can play one or two roles or both. We're good with both.
Sure. And like you said, more partnerships, government, banking, traditional advertising. I think more peer-to-peer marketing. Hey, I invested in this. Hey, look at what this company is doing, is going to get it to the next stages. But I remember when I was first told about Reg CF in 2014, it was at a Tech Disrupt conference here in Los Angeles and Santa Monica. And I saw the potential. I realized, hey, this is where it's all going. So, thank you for putting that together. And to speak to the boot camp element, I would love to package some actionable insights for listeners. You've seen founders use Reg CF successfully. You've seen them test out different types of offering pages, different types of community approaches, various types of marketing, as well as just the offering itself and what's listed in there. Well, what should founders look to try? What should they look to test out towards their own Reg CF success based on your experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote this article called 50 Shades of Crowdfunding, after the 50 Shades of, and I said, if you want a happy ending, follow these steps, right? And basically, a lot of them are things that people don't know because they don't understand. Like, for example, you increase your chances of raising the money by 70% if you have 4 or more people committed to working with you through the entire process. From the moment you decide we're doing this, you need 4 or more people. And you know this as a provider of a lot of these services, because the moment they hire you, it changes the game for them exponentially, right? Than if they didn't have your team as part of their team. So whether it's a hired team or it's a volunteer team or it's grabbing a bunch of employees off the construction floor, whatever, you need people. You need bodies who are going to take your plan and live and breathe it every single day. So
Yes.
that's the second thing, is just an unrelentless commitment to the success of your crowdfunding campaign. You have to be in it to win it. If you think that you can just decide to do this, set it and forget it, it's never going to happen. So, there's those kind of things. And then we talked about the money. How much money do you really need to raise? How many people make this mistake? And then, so they need a timeline use of proceeds. And even if they don't share it with anybody else, they need to have a timeline use of proceeds. And then they also need to have the ability to understand how many people it takes at each level of money to rate. So let's say, for example, we all know 10 people at $100 equals $1,000, right? So 10 people at $200 equals $2,000. So if you said, I want to raise $1 million, well, if you decide to sell your stock at X dollars, how many people are you going to need at that price point? 200, 500, whatever. And then go back and figure out, well, where do I have these pockets of those people that, personally, I know people, let's say I could say, well, personally, I know people who would spend $500 or $700. Why do I know this? Because, I don't know. I produced a convention for 7 years and they bought tickets and some of them spent $1,500 for a ticket. So if I went back to those people, I might be able to squeeze them for $300 to $500 if I was crowdfunding.
Sure.
Like you have to kind of go into the pockets of people that you have a relationship with, your social media pages, all those people, and determine realistically how much money each of them could, you could raise from each of them at a certain price point and be real about it. This is the other side. I'm sure you talk to lots of friends. Oh, we're going to raise this and we're going to raise that. And I've got people who, and then you tell them, okay, go find the first 20% because we can't launch without that. And what do they tell you? Oh, I called 5 people and nobody wants to do this. 5 people? 50, 500 people. Keep dialing. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So there's a lot of math involved in this, is what I guess I'm trying to say, that people do not consider.
I talk about it all the time. I couldn't agree more. I speak to it on the traffic side as well, too, where they probably need 50,000 visitors per $1 million raised. That's based on a 2% conversion rate. Google says 2.35% average across all conversions, internet wide. And that's actually pointing to a $1,000 average investment amount. That speaks to the minimum level investors,
Right.
Also speaks to the, 5, 10, 15, 25K, larger investors, all average together. King's Crowd says it's about 500 to 1,000. We like to point to 1,000 based on our experience. We've had other rounds where, larger investors came in and the average was much higher, but I find it's better to project in these fashions. I also preface everything with nothing's guaranteed. This is all contingent on a conversion rate. That 2%, that's the most important metric, because sometimes I'll hear founders then ask how much for, each visitor, what's my cost to capital? But it's really, are your target audiences converting from your deal? And if you can't get that first, 10, 20%, like you're mentioning, may want to look at why. May want to understand, hey, is something off on the pitch? Maybe let's run a focus group, some type of closed loop study. Why are investors not participating? Why are they? Can we manage those investors to the point of conversion, to the point of investment, and then take that pitch, take that storyline to the offering page, take the deal points, because digital allows for scale. So
Right.
taking what you've done offline, saying, hey, look at all this, we've raised 200K of $1 million from 200 investors, $1,000 average each. Like you said, a lot of people in your network will want to participate to support you or because they believe in you, where cold audiences don't have that same relatedness. So you want to see them work first, then be able to start doing it at much larger scale with digital is what we've found.
Right. Yeah, totally.
What about optimization? What do you tell founders if they've launched, it's not quite working yet? And this is the story for startups. This isn't specific to equity crowdfunding. It's I think even more of an issue with VCs. And like you said, the booth, trying to get someone walking by to see the deal. What are some different approaches towards optimization that you recommend?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm a big believer in why work hard when you can work smart. And before you launch your crowdfunding campaign and make your video and do all this stuff, go look at other companies. I mean, people today have the gift of how many years is it now? For 7 years of campaigns on the other funding portals that are similar to or exactly the same. You know what I'm saying? Like we have our first offering. It's a biopic. It's a movie. Well, there's lots of people that have crowdfunded movies, and successfully. I mean, Kristen, what's her name, did that TV show. She raised $5 million back in the Kickstarter days. Kristen, I can't remember. She's an actress, but you know what I'm saying? Like there is proof of concept in a lot of industries today where people can go and look and really rip apart those campaigns and see the nuances of the messaging in their video and all their graphics and how they told their story and everything else that they put in those campaigns. So that is a very important thing to do. And it's a gift sitting right there for them.
And one that's not opened enough, that gift. Because, you can go onto these analytic platforms. You could look at past campaigns on portals. You could target the issuer. You could write in the issuer's name and case study into Google and see marketers and other groups that have worked with them and sharing the actual recipe. Here's what worked.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great point. I think people hear the word research and push it off at times, but success leaves clues. You can see exactly the dynamics of what occurred and how to set it up for your campaign.
If you look at like 3 or 4 or 5 of them and you can see, they only raised $50,000 and they raised, $1 million, you can go, oh, that's pretty obvious to me. Their video sucks, or this is bad, or they they wrote this much text. The other one told their life story. I mean, there's so many little pieces to this that are critical to the success of raising the money, and people are not aware of it. You know what else is a really big mistake?
What's that?
People launch crowdfunding campaigns. I don't care what kind it is, even GoFundMe, a donation based, and they have not a single dollar show up. And it's 2 or 3 weeks into the campaign and it's still at zero. And I'm saying to myself, if I was a stranger and you introduced me on Twitter to your whatever kind of campaign it is, and you cannot convince your mother, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your best friend, not a single person who actually knows you, to give you a single dollar, and you want me to come step up for you, it's not happening. Like it's a turn off. It just shuts the whole energy down in my mind, and people don't see that part either.
Definitely creates that empty restaurant sensation where even if the product looks good, it feels off.
Or I call it a naked campaign.
That works as well. And I know on a Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they said if you don't do a third of your goal in the first day, first 24 hours, there's a 70-80% chance you would fail. I remember hearing that stat back in 2014. Little different for equity crowdfunding. Timelines are longer. But at the same time, that principle is still there for social dynamics. Yeah.
No, it's true. Well, I wouldn't say it's the first 24 hours. I mean,
right. Much longer for equity crowdfunding.
Much longer, yeah. But there is definitely, you definitely need to approach the people who know and love you and respect you and think of you as a successful business person, and make sure that they step up and put some of their money in. Otherwise, you will never, ever convince a bunch of strangers who don't know you and all the Facebook ads in the world is not going to help
Agreed.
you if they show up and there's no money there,
Yep. And, the same was true in the VC world. And you'd have a fund come on, someone notable, and I'd kick off the round. And the next day you'd see a bunch of investors who've been pitched, but were in consideration mode, hop on. So, it's those social dynamics at play. What about scale? What have you seen on the most successful campaigns? Any tips, any examples, anything you could point towards?
Well, I mean, one of the clients that, Kendall and I worked on early on was, Brewdog.
Yeah.
And obviously they did some fantastic stuff. They have, raised hundreds of millions of dollars doing 7 or 8 of these here and in Europe. And they've done creative stuff. I mean, they were throwing stuff out of an airplane in New York City, and flyers and different things. And they get really crazy. You know what I mean? And some of that stuff I love. I love that stuff. So I think people need to get more creative. If they're going to go speak from a stage, for example, they need to be like memorable. They just don't need to stand there like a stiff, person just speaking some speech. They need to engage the audience, and they need to have a real impression on the audience. So when the people walk out, everybody's talking. Do you see that guy? Look at what he was wearing, or he was throwing, whatever samples of his granola bar out in the audience in the middle of his presentation. All of a sudden, people were walking up the sides of the aisles, handing out, or whatever, just something. Just be big and bold.
Big and bold. The most proactive founders we've seen have the most successful campaigns, as you were mentioning earlier, calling their first degree networks, going, years back, making things happen, being featured on stages by publishers right and left. As marketers, we can then get that out to thousands to millions of people. But that initial content source needs to be there, that initial message. And Brewdog's such a great example. And you and Kendall Americo did a great job on that. And I was at one of their breweries in London, and on the menu, you could get a share with a beer. I've seen so many different promotions of theirs. They're great.
They have come up with so many creative things, Yeah.
Well, Ruth, I've been taking a list of notes here, and I know we talk about a lot of the same things on a daily basis, us more on the marketing side, but I'm learning from you and your stats right and left here. If listeners want to get in touch with you, to get in touch with Rise Up, how can they continue the conversation? And what are some final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with?
Yeah, so riseupcrowdfunding.com is my funding portal. It's our funding portal. I mean, I have other people involved in it, but we have you can connect with me through the content, section on the website, connect section on the website. But the best way to really get directly to me is to go to LinkedIn. I am a big proponent of LinkedIn. I have spent more time now on LinkedIn so it's older, 15, 16 years I've been on LinkedIn. And I have very targeted, I have probably over 3,000 or 4,000 high level, connections that I've spent years cultivating. So because it opens up other people to this whole thing. And so I would love to connect with everyone on LinkedIn, and please come and check out our first offering. We just launched, and it's live. We're excited about it.
Rise Up Crowdfunding. Go check it out. We'll have the links set up here, and love the invitation to connect with Ruth on LinkedIn. Ruth is a wealth of knowledge, and Ruth, I want to thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast, share the story of Reg CF, share what's not working in the space today, what is, where you see it all going, and all the great things you're doing with major brands today. So really appreciate the time.
No, thank you for inviting me. And, I tell it like it is. I'm a straight shooter. Some people don't like to hear what I have to say, but I'm going to tell it like it is, because if somebody doesn't speak truth to power, we will never get anywhere. So I appreciate you giving me this platform. You're doing great work with the podcast, and let's just keep collaborating, and hopefully other people will see the light and will, continue to expand the industry.
Sounds great to me. Keep making things happen. like we did in 2012 and with the conference and the platform, all the great things you're doing. Listeners, want to thank you for tuning in. Definitely recommend you get in touch with Ruth, and we will see you all next time.